for similar reasons that what you're explaining, Sebastian.
All right, yeah. Okay, but then you also know like the nice weather of southern Spain.
Yeah.
That's
It's
beautiful.
something. It's too warm in summer, I would say. I am happier weather like here in Barcelona that I was in the south of Spain.
Very good. All right, guys, we are live with a live audience right now, so I'm gonna switch up and share our camera. They got a bit of a backstage view here, I would say, which is a privilege. Okay, we are ready to go. So welcome everyone. Welcome to our panel on AI agents in the real world. The real world, of course, is my least favorite world among worlds. No, joking. I like the real world. I'm your host. My name is Sebastian Streifert. I work in the leadership team of Beetroot, and this is not Beetroot. These are dogs. So because I guess I wanted to ask you how you feel today. My feeling is usually somewhere in the middle line. I'm a typical nonstop number 3. That's not the middle line. I was trying to trick you. Do I have a chat? Sasha, who's our producer. Sasha, do we have a live connection with the chat here so we can see what they're answering? No. Okay, so whatever mood you're in, the ones who are listening to this, I'm happy you're in that mood. It's okay. It's normal. You'll get through it. If you're too happy, you'll be back to normal level soon. If you're sad, you'll be back up to normal level soon. That's fine. Okay, levels number 5 and 3 are the main answers. Anyway, this is Beetroot, at least our logo. And Beetroot are the organizers of this webinar. We are an ecosystem, a tech ecosystem. I would describe it as a group of tech companies with different focuses. We can help you with complex cloud and LLM setups and other software projects where security comes first. We can also help you upskill your team, make sure they're equipped with the latest knowledge. So if you like the content of today's discussion, you can reach out and we can talk about software development or team training, upskilling. But today, we do want to talk about things that hopefully will not only inspire you, but also help you see what's possible. Maybe also understand some of the technical hurdles of AI agents. The subtitle, if you checked your invite, of this panel is From Prototypes to Production. And obviously, there's a lot of learnings to be had between those two stages, prototyping and production. And we have a panel of experts to help us shed some light on that. At least they're much better than I am. We'll take questions at the end. We are collecting them from YouTube, where this is being live streamed. And yeah, I think that's it. So let me introduce the panelists. First off, we have Manuel Morales. You
Hello,
are,
everyone.
hey, Manuel, you're fractional CTO at NUA, which is a cycling coach in WhatsApp, and Quizzic, an AI-powered language learning platform.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Thank you for hosting us.
Great to have you with us. We also have Kevin Ostlin. You are co-founder of AndSend, which I describe as an AI-powered relationship engagement platform for consultants.
Yes.
And I've used it myself as a salesperson. I really like it. Welcome.
Thank you. Hey, everyone.
And we also have Oliver King-Smith with us, founder of Smarter AI. And you are a company that builds private custom AI solutions for organizations. You do a lot of things, I imagine, but that's one way to package it, isn't it?
Hello, thanks for having me on today.
That's good. Okay, now that we're up and running, let's just kick this off and jump into the question. And my first question, it's quite a basic one, but what is a better than average definition of agentic AI, just to get us on the same page? Is it?
Well,
Kevin?
to me, it is a system that, I mean, we are very used now to these regular chat interfaces where we talk to the AI, but just simply a system that can not just answer you in a chat, but also perform actions. So to observe, decide, and act across tools to pursue a goal or whatever the intent you give it. That would be my shortest description.
Yeah, I think an important thing about agentic elements is that they usually interact with other things. So they don't need to, but the most common applications that we see is when they're actually doing something and have agency where they can control something as opposed to just giving you information as well. I think that's kind of an important part of the agentic AI experience. And with that comes enormous potential for automation and for taking over functions, especially in the back office and that kind of stuff. So I think that's also important to realize. There's now even underlying protocols, like we call it MCP, for allowing agents to control other applications. And this is kind of a powerful addition to AI. I think Kevin wanted to say something there.
No, maybe not. But okay, but that's a great. But is this something that I guess your average Joe, common people encounter in their everyday lives now? Is it, or is it still something that's at the periphery of people's
And I
existence?
would say it is very common nowadays, right? Even ChatGPT or Gemini, every time they generate an image or they generate a Python script and they run it, actually that is a tool that it was provided to them and they decided to use it. So at the end of the day, there is a very natural shift in which most of the chatbots that we're interacting with every day, they are now, most of them becoming agents, really. So it's they're very present.
What is the difference? Where do you draw the line between a chatbot or like a chat interaction with
So
ChatGPT?
at the minimum is this very technical thing of we're giving it tools that they can decide to use before replying to the user. So not just text, whatever text that they generated, we're going to send to the user. They can decide, oh, before replying to the user, I'm going to make use of the web search tool to find something online or anything like that. It's been quite a while since most of the usual chatbots, they have transitioned to that.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think one of the
exactly.
things that kind of, oh, I was going to say one of the things that drove a lot of that was the chatbots were terrible at things like arithmetic. And so very early
Right.
on, people started integrating these tools where the chatbot, instead of trying to answer the question, would go, "Oh, I'll just use this tool. I'll use my calculator basically to get the answer." And then it's really grown from there pretty significantly, where you'll see ChatGPT running quite sophisticated code behind the scenes. Even if you don't see it, it's running it to try and answer questions, as opposed to just coming out with a regular answer.
Yes, definitely. And I think one of the interesting applications that are starting to come up now is one thing that almost everyone I think that have tried ChatGPT have tried is to ask it to answer a certain email, maybe to get help with drafting an email for you, and just being able to pull in a lot of the context from your entire thread can help you a lot with understanding the context, so you don't have to copy paste 10 messages, for example. And that is the reading side. But then also, if the agent or like ChatGPT in itself can help you send the email and that you start interacting with your different apps inside of ChatGPT or whatever you're using, that is when the workflows are starting to become truly agentic. So you take the action from within the LLM as well.
Yeah, because
Yeah,
I was thinking there's an element of autonomousness here, right?
yeah, that idea of agency, I think, is important, where
Yeah.
it's acting, it's making a decision at some level as well, I think, is important. But it's driving the tools, but it's also that agency, I think, is kind of an important element that is where the real value creation comes if you're trying to take on business processes. If you're using it as a personal productivity tool, maybe the agency is a little bit less important. But I really kind of think in true agentic AI, it is taking that agency and making a decision on something.
Mm. And you
Yes.
said you said a true agentic approach there. Is agentic washing a problem, like where the gap between the level you buy as a consumer and the level that's marketed differs, where people kind of overstate the autonomy of?
Yeah, I think that is a bit of an ongoing problem right now, where I call it marketing overhang.
Ah,
Um,
yeah.
so there's perhaps a little bit sometimes too much promise. Where we've seen the agents working really well is when they're making very limited decisions. Um, so as opposed to broad level decisions. And so for example, a good example of that is a tax compliance problem that was going on at a financial institution. We have an agentic AI system that can basically make the decision of, okay, I understand that these two documents need to be hooked together and they're related to the same tax issue, they're related to the same person, and it could do that almost 100% of the time, 99.9% of the time. But also importantly, it can also understand when it doesn't know the answer and flag that as a human needs to go look at it, basically. But so most of the time it can operate in the background and you can have high confidence it's done the right thing, but then other times it will flag it. It's like, okay, I need a bit of help here.
Right, I get it. I think we'll get back to that question because I see a question there about when the human needs to be involved to verify results. But before we get there, I wanted to direct this question to you, Manuel. I think many of the people listening today, they're probably here because they're interested in applications of agentic AI. Some of them might be in early stages, prototype stages. They might be implementing them in their organizations, thinking about it, want to be up to date. And if they are in a prototype stage, let's assume, what would you say, getting a little bit more on the technical side here, is the difference between a prototype agent and a production grade one? Like, what do people get wrong? Is it easy to start but hard to master? What do you think the difference is?
I never seen a technology that gives for a better demo, right? I don't know what you think, guys, but the demos are impressive. They're so exciting, all these videos that you can see generated with them, but then you try to generate something that is production grade with them, and it's a real challenge. And so there is a very, very quick iteration which you do the MVP, and you see the MVP, and you put all the things together, and you see the first few results, and you say, right, the very straightforward case, yes, it works, but at the moment that you put in front of what could represent the person that could represent the customer, you try in different edge cases, then you realize how difficult it is to get it right. So I think it's very, very, very easy to realize that yourself when you start building it. So the advice could be that the antidote to that would be to start building now, right? It's such an experimental technology that these recipes for building software that we have that are more focused on execution and building rather than on discovery and experimentation. I'm not sure they apply anymore for at least for the software companies that I have been working with, that we are so used to build software and rely on people that know how to build reliable, scalable software. And suddenly we are dropped with this technology that nobody has 15 years of experience with this.
Right.
They weren't a thing really. So you can't go to the senior in your team and say, okay, how should I build a product that does this and that? They don't have this system design that they can do and nail it on the first attempt by any means.
Yeah, so what you're saying is there will be a lot of experimentation, and it's hard to actually predict how much work it will be.
Yeah, you have to do experimentation and feedback loops to the extreme, I would say. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say that in many ways, I think people make the mistake of thinking that AI is just software development, and it's not. I think you need a very different mindset. It's really much closer, I think, to an engineering mindset that you need to take when you're actually building with it. Software is completely predictable, and you can tell if it's not working, right? You know what it's supposed to do. And if your software crashes, or if your software is not doing what you wanted it to do, you have a bug and you have a problem. AI's got all these kind of silent failure modes and unpredictability, and it's inherently stochastic. It's not reproducible on a given day. And all these kind of problems then mean you have to start thinking about how you design the system with solid engineering so it's going to work the way you expect out in the real world. And I completely agree with Manuel. It's much harder than what most people think it's going to be. It's very easy to get that initial demo and it looks great, but actually deploying it is a lot harder.
Yeah, definitely. And I think also, just to add to that, that if we look at previous technology, it's often been that technology has taken time to develop, but now it's almost as if the technology is there, but we, the people, and how we are organized as well in our organizations are maybe not ready to adopt it. So it's almost as if people have become the bottleneck, which is what I think is very interesting, or the really interesting question for leadership, and like how who can be quick enough to actually reorganize the organization to adopt AI truly at scale, to not just implement it in your product, but also implement it so that your organization become AI first in that sense.
Yeah, there was a panel session I was on just last week at the AI World Congress with Oracle and IBM, and they were basically arguing the same thing you are, I think, Kevin, that the organization needs to adapt to effectively apply AI. And I'm wondering if that's quite a hard ask for a lot of organizations to do that. But it is interesting that they're perceiving similar problems with their client implementations.
So there's like a consumer side here where you need to build up a custom. You want to get people to start adopting using agentic features in their work, in their lives. But there's also the development side where I also imagine that the tech setup is not actually built for this kind of product. Is there anywhere companies that start to get into agentic AI system development for themselves, is there anywhere they under or over invest when building these? Because I know you all have experience from multiple systems and being a part of building them in the past.
Yeah, it's a good question. Like I can speak for myself. I mean, we're a pretty small startup, but still we went through quite a few cycles of, like, I think I would see it as early bottlenecks that you, or like walls that you run into, I think, where we invested too much in just trying to create the perfect agents and prompts and so on, and too little on the integrations to our systems. So in the end, I think AI becomes so much more powerful, especially agentic AI, if you actually spend a lot of time on structuring the context that this AI should read in the end and write to. So just as an example, what I mean, like if you want to create a support AI agent to help you with support cases, then you might need to integrate to your ticketing system and also to your CRM system, and maybe to some documentation or like knowledge base for how your product or service works, or like maybe even some terms and service, or depending on where we are in the support organization. And I think if you just let the AI go loose and read from those sources and then try to come up with an answer, that won't produce good results at all. But then if you spend some time, just a little time even, to actually process the data and create a data pipeline where you do some data labeling and like restructure the data in a way that makes it easier for the agents to read, it will also perform much cleaner actions, and it will be much more, I think, valuable, and you will also need less human in the loop in the end. That's what we have been seeing. So spending a lot more time on context engineering has really helped.
I think one area where people potentially underinvest a lot is really defining their use case they want to solve very rigorously before they get going. It's easy to sort of have this slightly nebulous idea of what you want to try doing with your agentic AI system, and that often, I think, leads to a lot of problems. And part of that definition of your use case, you really want to build out a very solid validation set that this is the benchmark you're going for. This is what you want to see have happen. And investing in those costs quite a bit of time and effort. It's not that glamorous, but it's really important, because then you can actually measure how well you're doing in your implementation. And without that, it's really, people often struggle, like, well, it seems like it's a bit better today or it's a bit worse today, but do you really know where you're going? And so you need to build those benchmarks up early that you yourself are shooting for, that you want to try and achieve with your system. And I think is an area that is often overlooked and underinvested in by organizations when they start a project.
Yeah, I agree with that. It was night and day of having this benchmarks, either these evals ahead of time, like before you release the product, where you can actually test that the agent is behaving the way that you think it should, but also this monitoring that you can build in production, which you can be constantly monitoring that the behavior is the one that you expect. No, this wasn't so central or core in previous HTTP applications, no, but then now you really it's a huge difference that you can actually do that. And I know this is replying to the question in the inverse order. No, that's what are they underinvesting rather than overinvesting? But I agree 100% with all of that. We have been underinvesting in these benchmarks that really should be in place to make sure that everything works accordingly.
And I think that's a relevant answer, and it makes me curious, and this might be a stupid question, but how do you benchmark behavior? Because it feels like such an abstract thing.
Go on, Oliver, please. I want to hear your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, once again, it kind of goes back to what I just said originally. Is that use case? You really need to understand what it is that you're trying to solve. So once you understand what you're trying to solve, then you start building up the benchmark for it.
Right.
And if the benchmark isn't quite perfect, that actually turns out to be okay. You put it in production, and you will find exceptions. You will find problems. But then you expand your benchmark. Then at that point in time, go, okay, it needs to also handle this, and it needs to handle that, and it will get better over time. And one of the things that we often caution companies is if this is the first time you're doing it, is better to produce an internal tool as opposed to an external facing tool. So external facing tools have a whole bunch of other problems that you need to worry about, as opposed to internal tools where you can kind of control the behavior of the people using the tool. And so anyway, that's all part of the process you have to go through. But if you haven't defined what it is you want to solve very clearly, then you're going to get into trouble, because then how do you benchmark what you're trying to get to?
And I found it fascinating how different it can be, right? Compared to where I come from. That I'm used to this test. That is, if this goes in, this goes out. But now what goes out is every time you run the machine, it's a completely different sentence. Maybe it's meaning the same, but completely different words, and you cannot test it with the same way that you used to test your software. And so if you're talking about text generation, something very frequent and very common is to use LLM as a judge. You're basically using LLMs to test the LLM, which sounds unreliable, and partially it is, but it's a completely different beast. Before we wanted to have this green test suite, and it wasn't until the test suite is fully green and all tests pass that you can actually go to production. Now a healthy test suite is at 70% green, because it's so unpredictable that if you get it right 70% of the times, that means that you're being very thorough in your testing, and that is a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, I do a little bit of, I'm not a tech guy like I think all three of you are, but I do some coding in my free time, and I switched to vibe coding recently with AI. And of course, I used another AI to audit the code of the first AI just to make sure that it's going well for personal projects. I wanted to get in a little bit to Kevin, you started talking about data pipelines and kind of focusing, investing in them. How can you kind of set up data pipelines so that an agent can act autonomously on its own without compromising the user trust, exposing sensitive data, because that's a risk, especially if it's externally facing?
Yeah, it's a very big question and a hard one, but I think also like one of the more important to solve, to get it right. And for me, like, user trust starts with never surprising people with what the agent can see or do. Like, users are already a bit skeptical of AI. So if they see an agent performing actions they didn't actually want, they'll lose trust very quickly. And I think about it in 3 layers. Like, when it comes to data pipeline, if you want to build a data pipeline where a lot of AI sits, that is also going to be customer facing, especially. It's like you have boundaries, you have minimization and observability. So the first, with boundaries, it's data access, where that's the main guardrail. So you never want to point an agent to all of your data and hope it behaves. Instead, we put like a a gateway or something between the agent and everything else. So for us, we have our internal APIs mapping to integrations and so on. So those APIs know which user workspace is making the request, and they enforce our scopes and permissions before anything touches the model. So the agent never has like raw database access, for example, or provider credentials. It only calls our scoped capabilities. That's the first one. And then second, we minimize and specialize. So for each agent, we're very explicit about which data and tools it can use. It usually doesn't need full rows of data. For example, it needs summaries or IDs or labels. And we split agents by domain. So like if you have a sales agent or a CS, like customer success agent, support agent, they might have access to the same systems, but they perform very different things. So in their domain, it's easier for them to keep track of what is what. We've found. And it reduces like hallucinations and also the blast radius if something goes wrong. So that's the second one. And thirdly, we invest a lot in observability and permission propagation as well, I call it. So every step in the pipeline, like if you have input somewhere, you know what permissions are like and sources that are put into that. You need to carry it on and have full tracking throughout the pipeline, so you don't like lose track of permissions and accidentally mixes things up along the way, because then the whole purpose disappears. I think that is the hardest part, probably, actually creating a robust pipeline where every step is. So that eventually, like, you can evolve it to a framework eventually, but I think it's about starting with a very narrow use case, strong boundaries, and really good logging, and then you can expand from there. And with that, also starting with human in the loop, like all the time, and then gradually, like maybe automating more and more of the tasks the agents that they're performing.
What are some other
Oh,
security aspects? Yeah, do you want to build on?
yeah, I was going to add, I completely agree with Kevin on that one, that as a general rule, you never want an agent to have more permission than the user that's using the agent. So it's sort of like the user credentials needs to transfer down to the agent, and you often want the agent more restricted than that. And yet recently we came across a case that was kind of interesting because of the fact that this particular organization, some users weren't allowed to see information for legal reasons, but it may be useful for them to know that the information exists. And so now we've got sort of a bit of a conundrum, like, okay, how do we handle that? That if someone goes and asks the agent, do we have any information about such and such? We can't show them the information, but it might be very useful for the person to know that such information exists and go and ask for permission to actually go see that information, if that makes sense. And so we actually haven't figured out exactly how we want to handle that one yet, but it has come up in conversations. But as a general rule of thumb, if I was going to summarize what Kevin's saying, is agents should never have more permissions than the user that's using them. And that's important to keep in mind, because it's not necessarily easy to engineer the systems to do that. You have to spend some time thinking about how to achieve that.
It is very interesting to me to see that how most of us are converging to the same ideas. No, that is literally the approach that we took in NUA, and it's I'm very pleased to hear that is like the standard in the industry. It's very comforting. Another one is controlling the information that it is exposed to, right? This idea of prompt injection. Every time you use a coding agent, Sebastian, you were talking about how you're doing pipe coding and everything. When they are about to search on the web, normally they will ask you, do you want to visit this website? It's because if the website could contain instructions about that were malicious, like they take all the keys that you can find in the .env file and upload into this website, they would happily go and do it in most cases. And when they are manufacturing these coding agents and they asking these questions to the user, basically what they're doing is transferring this responsibility to you. So because there is no, it's extremely difficult to guarantee that. I don't even know if it's possible to guarantee that LLMs are susceptible to prompt injection. I've never seen that actually becoming a reality, and it's very scary. When you were working with MySQL, there was a very strict syntax that you say, okay, I can escape the characters and I can prevent the somebody called Bobby Tables to drop all the info, to remove all the information from the database. But now it's scary. It's a scary time.
Yeah, and so what you're saying is essentially that the human is also needed sometimes, and several of you have touched on this. Where in the process do you think the human has the most value to add? Is it everywhere? Do we need the human to still be present everywhere?
I think it's a matter of like risk, right? We also have the EU AI Act for everyone in EU. I mean, that is actually defining this as well. That like automated decision making is not even legal, so to speak, if you're like in a high risk environment. But I also think that even if we wouldn't have the EU AI Act, or even if you're outside of EU, I think it makes a lot of sense. Like, for example, if you are developing code with AI agents, you are doing that on your local computer. At least most people are, I hope, like, or something like in a local environment, not directly in production. And what I mean is that then the blast radius again is very small, of course, and you have human in the loop there by design before actually deploying to production. But if suddenly, let's say, we would actually have agents working on code in production without reviews or anything, you start to come into like high risk territory, I would say, depending of course, like what type of software you're delivering. But still, I just think that you have to be aware of what risks you have in your business, just like with anything else, really, and make sure that the right people are signing off the right things.
Yeah, I think that with the signing off is the key word there. No, we for the use cases that I'm used to work with, the right now or at least at the beginning, where at Quisic we're helping teachers to generate content for the users. No, it's a language learning application, so it's exercises and things like that. And right now in the early stages, I wouldn't even call it a human in the loop. It's just a collaboration between the human and the AI. Like at the beginning, is triggered by the human, and then there's a constant iteration come and forth. Like, and I can see how as we're getting better with the prompts and the right model and the right workflows. The interaction the agents are way more and more and more autonomous. But the last one is this sign off. No, it's the approval. It's like if they are writing code, you want to review the lines of code before you ship into production. If the system is critical, no. So it's like the last frontier, no, the final sign off.
I think Manuel, what you're describing there is what we like to call assistive intelligence instead of artificial intelligence. There's this idea that we're helping people actually do more than what they could do without these kind of tools. And so those ones are just inherently human in the loop. And I think they're very powerful agentic AI case. The other type that I think Kevin was referring to is when you're tending to do sort of what I'd call back office automation is where we normally see a lot of that work right now. And as Kevin was saying, you've got to look at the risk. What is the risk if the system gets something wrong? And you also want to build in the capability for the system to be able to opt out and say, I'm not comfortable making this decision. And you can do that with agentic AI. AI systems can actually be quite good at telling you, I'm not comfortable making this decision right now. And they will kick it back out for a human to review. Once again, it's something you need to tune. And you got to look at, you basically got to look at what we call your F1 scores and see how it's doing when you're going through the prototyping of the system. So effectively looking at the false positives and the false negatives, and you're trying to minimize that and get to the right level for the risk factor that you have for that particular process. But it's a balancing act. But to a large extent, we prefer the assistive intelligence things. We think that's actually a bigger value add for a lot of organizations.
Is there any relationship between agentic AI and something that's quite big now, self-driving cars? I mean, you're all aware of that, and currently, in a lot of cases, you need to have your hands on the wheel and so on. But I think we're all imagining that it's moving towards not doing that, and it's moving towards the car being completely autonomous. Is there a similar thing happening generally in agentic AI where systems will just be completely autonomous at some point without the human, not assistive anymore, just completely agentic?
Well, I think
And
we will.
I,
Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead, sir.
I can see a lot of parallelism, right? Even with when I think of NUA, even if it was a cycling coach via WhatsApp, when it started, ChatGPT wasn't a thing. There wasn't ChatGPT in NUA. It was all pure workflows written in code. And all the work that we have been doing for the past couple of years is a transition to delegate more and more and more and more responsibility to the AI. No? And I think there will always be some calculations that we will ever want to do in the backend, because you want to calculate that all the load that you're putting on yourself every week is the right one, and you're not overworking yourself. And I can see the same things happening. I know very little about self-driving cars, but I can see when I hear about how Waymo works and how there is still people watching that can intervene and drive your car when they get in trouble, or these robots that are now that they started selling not that long ago, that they can do the chores at your house, right? When you see the reality of how they work, they at the beginning it's going to be mostly a human driving them remotely with a VR headset, and they're going to use that as training data. So I see it's a very, very present approach, this idea of having something that is very, very human driven, having it interacting with AI, and then be delegating more, increasingly delegating, until hopefully one day we get to fully autonomous. No?
Yeah, I think I think self-driving cars are an example of agentic AI. I mean, that is almost the perfect definition of agentic AI, right? You've got the agency and the AI is controlling the system. We're not there in self-driving cars by description. And as you're saying, Manuel, the robots are an interesting case. We've just quoted a project for a robot application to do one very specific, narrow job. And even with that, we think it's still going to cost quite a bit of money just to do that one particular job with a fully humanoid and quote unquote intelligent robot. It's not a trivial amount of work, just because it is quite hard to get things to operate truly independently.
Yeah, I remember.
For sure.
Just a fun anecdote on that. I was in LA last year, and they have these little robots that deliver food on the street, on the sidewalks. Have you seen those? And I was like, wow, this is cute. It's making little blip blop sounds, and it's probably autonomous, but it's actually remote controlled all the time by a real human. That kind of shocked me. Yeah, Kevin, please continue.
No. I think agentic systems in the real world are very, very interesting, and even though they are coming up, we have a lot of work there left to do, as you were suggesting as well, both of you. And I think when we look at it, it's more like if we look at business tasks, or if we look at, for example, marketing, just as an example, you can actually now with AI not just generate text, but also creative assets and assets that are aligned with your brand and so on. And you can deploy then experiments based on hypotheses that are created by AI, and then measure the data and collect the data, and with integrations to the same agentic system, understand what assets are performing well, what assets are performing bad, feed that back to the system and create new hypotheses and new assets, and continue A/B testing. So that's an example of a fully autonomous system. Of course, you would probably have a human there, deploy a human there to make sure that it's not diverging or creating any inappropriate ads, for example. But for sure, we are getting there with truly autonomous systems. Also, like not just in the real world, but in the digital business space. If we can just sum it up with that, or typical white collar jobs.
Nice. Sorry, I briefly disconnected. Had a camera issue, but I'm back. I wanted to not address your answer directly, Kevin, but kind of build on this because I heard something quite interesting before from you, Oliver. You were talking about this road to autonomousness or agency. There, you need to hit the right F1 parameters. You mentioned F1 and false positives and so on. So could you talk a little bit more about what kind of constraints you need to build into an agent that has, you exist in a noisy world, sensor heavy, there's a lot of input, anything can go wrong. How do we get to that perfect F1 score? And is that what F1 score is? I just made that assumption.
Well, you're probably never going to get to a perfect F1 score. A perfect F1 score is that answers everything correctly all the time, whether it's true or if you imagine a series of true and false questions, it will get it always right, always get all the truths right, all the falses right. So you're unlikely to get there. Just as humans, in all honesty, are unlikely to be perfect as well. So it's a sort of a nature of the beast that it's very hard to be perfect at these kind of things. So when you're going through that process, it gets back a lot to what I talked about at the very start. You really want to invest in, okay, this is the use case we want to solve. So let's say you're looking at a back office situation that you want to automate, as an example. And then we build that bench, that test bench, basically. So it's a large test bench, a validation set that we build out that will make sure that it's completely isolated from any of the training. So we're not training to the answer in some sense. And then we'll build up those models, however that's going to be put together for that particular solution. And when we do that, then we'll then measure, how well is it doing against that test bench? How does it look? What is it happening? And then is it acceptable, that performance that the system has? And that's a decision that ultimately comes down to what Kevin talked about is this, what is your risk for making a bad decision, and how well does it work in that particular environment? And so that's kind of the nature of the beast right now with these agentic AI systems. Is you can't expect perfection. They don't work like traditional software systems. You have to expect some level of randomness in them. And so even when you run your test bench, you will potentially get different answers each time, but you don't want a very big spread of answers. You want it to be, hopefully every time you run the test bench, it's about the same answer. But those are the kind of processes that we go through when we're working on a new project, trying to figure out, how are we going to make this work for a client and get that score that they're going to need to feel comfortable that, yeah, this is performing as well as people do, or even better potentially than what people do. Or we're going to decide, we can live with a little bit worse. And each time you want to move that up, that basically that performance up, it costs, so to go from 80% success to 90% success is a lot cheaper than going from 90 to 99% success, even though in theory you're putting 9% versus 10%. It's a significant cost factor as you try to get better and better test results.
Great. I think we're going to start thinking about moving into listener questions. I'm not sure what the chat looks like, Sasha, but you're going to have to keep us updated. We can start taking them now. I will ask one question that's kind of open-ended that will bridge this, or maybe it will not bridge it, actually. We'll see. I don't know if we're now at an incremental stage in the evolution of agentic AI or if we're at the more revolutionary stage still. How do you see, from a production perspective, next year changing how we work or how companies work with producing agentic AI? Do you see anything new happening or changing?
I can take that one to begin with. I think I have so many toys in my toy box that have been developed over the last 3 years alone that I've got 10 years worth of work to try and figure out how to use them all properly. So
it's going too fast.
It's not going too fast. I don't think it's going too fast, but there's a tremendous amount. So in terms of real world applications, I think you're going to see massive changes over the next 2 to 3 years.
Massive changes.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like a huge gap of Bakun, what is possible now that wasn't possible 5 years ago. Of things that you can do. that is now our job to fill them in, right? Because it is
Yeah.
all of these opportunities that we see of building something cool. That and so we are spending a lot of time just experimenting and building things for the sake of building them, and I think that is the right thing to do, because
Yeah.
there are so many opportunities that you want to exploit that. I've never seen anything like this in decades, really. Sorry,
Yeah,
Kevin.
definitely. Yeah, definitely. I think just in general, I mean, we have a lot of Lego bricks to build applications of, and even before AI and LLMs came to this incredible boom that they are in now, we had that. But now with AI, it's almost like we've gotten a completely new way of looking at all of those Lego bricks and completely new opportunities. So I usually say that it's like if when we look at software as a service and all of these typical, yeah, we have a ton of those systems that have been developed during the past 20 years or even more. And that canvas has been pretty filled, but now we have a completely new or even unknown canvases that are blank that we need to figure out what to do with. And it will take time to do that. And again, I think the bottleneck is not the technology, it's more we, the people. We have to figure out what to do with it. And the ones that are greatest in doing that will be the winners probably 10 years from now.
It's an exciting time. Okay, I will encourage the audience to keep asking questions. We have received a few already, and these might be, quite random. They can be about anything relating to this topic, and they could be about actual projects they're involved with right now. I don't think they'll ever have a chance to get this good input from a panel like the three of you. But one user, Devasisar, is asking, for a basic RAG agent that retrieves information from a technical manual, at what point should a user or human be involved in that loop? Get a moment to think about it.
And we even gave up on RAC in the strict term at NUA, and we are substituting it by just a purely agentic search. And so for those who don't know RAC in the most classical sense that we must know is when you take the question from the user and you use it, you try to make a search against a vector database to find information that is related to it. So when you send the information to the agent, you send the question of the user, but also everything that you found in the database that you think is important to know. And that it was a moment in which if you open YouTube and you were into AI, all you would see was videos about how to do RAG. And then if you start doing RAG, then you realize how difficult it is to get it right, as is usually very frequent with AI. Because it's out of context and it's incomplete, and the answer doesn't really have to be similar to the question itself. So, and we ended up doing things that were radically different. Like we are abusing the fact that Gemini has like 1 million token context window, and we're putting there like a lot of information. We don't use a database. We just ask Gemini with a fixed huge chunk of data, and we just have a sub agent dedicated to search in that sense, right? So I would basically rethink if you actually need RAG, right, and try to be creative there.
I would think that I'm not quite sure the motivation behind the question. I mean, usually you think of that you have a human in the loop when you're doing RAG because someone is typing in a question and getting back the answer. One of the things that we've seen with RAG is quite good at finding small details, a bit of a needle in the haystack thing. It can be a lot weaker at answering more general questions. But one of the key things that people perhaps don't experiment as much with, which you can get a lot of value out of with RAG, is your embedding model that you're using to put stuff into the vector database. So if you're having a lot of trouble with your RAG system, you may want to consider, are you using the right embeddings for your vector database? And if you change those, does that increase the performance? And once again, it gets back to that, build yourself a benchmark. This is the results I'd like to see out of the system. and then experiment with different embedding models and see, what are the results that you're getting back.
All right. I hope that satisfies the user, or maybe not. Maybe it's a.
Well, we can always take follow-up questions if we're not
Yeah.
answering it.
Exactly. You can take a follow-up one. We have another user who's asking, it's some background info first. I'm wondering about the risks of having AI agents collaborate across domains to serve a user. You mentioned that there are separate agents for areas like sales and finance. If a user begins by interacting with the sales agent, but during the session, the sales agent needs information from the finance agent, will the finance agent ensure that the response aligns with the user's access rights? Is there a risk that switching between agents could allow the user to extract data they shouldn't have access to?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think, you have to also start with what system you're building for. Like, it might be possible that someone in like, if you work in sales, you will interact through a specific orchestrating agent that also knows what it can use from the sales side and from the finance side, like very limited data there. And what we've done a lot internally is like layer different layers of context. So I think it comes back to context engineering, that if you want to have good and fast fast applications that are also adhering to permissions, you have to look at what type of role does the person have and permissions does the person have, like the end user using it, and then feed that into the system. So you will get an error. Worst case, like if the agents underneath the hood try to do something that they shouldn't, they will get an error from the API because that user doesn't have those permissions there. But then you put scaffolding in the context to make sure that you don't get errors and so on, because you want to have a smooth user experience. I'm not sure if that I'm trying to make it as non-technical as possible, but it's difficult.
I think it gets back a little bit to the idea that the agent should never have more permissions than what the user would have to access that data. So in a generic setup, it is quite possible there could be risks. Depending on how the system's been engineered, you need to think that out. How do all these agents work, and how do permissions get transferred between agents if you're having agent-to-agent calls? And that's not a well settled architecture, I don't think, for that right now. It's pretty much we're finding we're having to build that bespoke often into particular applications.
Often, I think we find situations where the agent doesn't have any access to information, do we? Like I
Yeah.
know a lot of customer support agents, they cannot actually fix the things that the user have an issue with.
And like I said, we've also got some interesting cases where sometimes it'd be useful for the agent to be able to alert people there's interesting information, but can't reveal the information, which is yet another use case that's totally different from what we're seeing previously in the corporate setting in some ways.
Yeah. Sasha, I don't know. Are we getting any more questions? I don't have any more in coming through. It's like sad smiling. That's a shame. We have 3 fantastic people and they're not asking questions. That's okay. I will ask one. I think, as I said before, there's probably some of the listeners here that are in early stages of projects. I think they are representing organizations that are thinking about going into agentic AI. What's a practical step you'd recommend for a company exploring agentic AI today? What can they do if they're like they want to get in there, not get left behind in some way?
So I will bring up this MIT study that's gotten a lot of press recently, which is that in the US, MIT did a study of big organizations trying to adopt AI. Wasn't universally agentic AI, but a lot of them were doing agentic AI. And they found that 95% of the projects were failing. And that made a lot of headlines. It was in Forbes, it was in Fortune, Wall Street Journal, the Financial Times, that kind of thing. And one of the things they didn't point out, a lot of those articles, some did, was that the MIT study also showed that those 5% that were succeeding had something that was in common that the other ones did not. And that was that they had brought in outside help early on in the project to help them. So I tell that to people all the time. If you want to be successful and you haven't done this before, go out and find people that can help you. People who've got real AI experience to help guide you through that process. That doesn't mean you need to give up your IP. It doesn't mean you have to give up control, but go out and ask for help. It's going to make a huge difference. And when they did that, what they found is your chance of succeeding went from under 5% to well over 67%. So you had a 2/3 chance of succeeding if you asked for help, and a 5% chance if you didn't ask for help. And the other advice is I wouldn't just toss the project into IT. I have nothing against IT. I live in IT. But if you do that, it's almost doomed to fail, because you need the whole organization to be involved in order to make these projects successful. It gets back to what Kevin was saying. You need kind of a mind change inside the organization. So you don't want to compartmentalize it just into IT and tell them to go use Copilot and do this. It won't work either. You're guaranteeing yourself almost certain failure when you do that. There'll be a few that succeed. So those are my two pieces of advice. Get outside help and make sure that you've got buy-in from the most senior management level and that it's a cross-functional team that is approaching your problem.
Yeah, I think those are words of wisdom, right? I was talking a bit earlier in this panel how with most companies we don't have those seniors that have been doing this already for a few years, right? And having the possibility of hiring external help of people that have the experience how to build them is a luxury that can really help hugely. I'm not surprised by those numbers that you just mentioned. I didn't know them, and I absolutely believe them. For those who cannot afford to do that, I would go back to the roots of. I think we should be going back to roots of agile, but not agile in the sense of a Scrum and story points and all the crap, but agile in the sense of small iterations and having the domain expert sitting next to the engineer, working hand in hand and having demos. I wouldn't even have demos and having them talk to each other every 2 weeks. I would have them collaborate twice a week. We need to, for those who don't, most of us that we didn't have this experience, I would just treat this as purely as experimentation rather than building. So it's a lot of trying things to discover what is actually difficult, what is actually easy, and what can we actually build, because we don't really know what is going to be hugely difficult until we actually try.
Getting one last, maybe we'll see if we have time for another one, but one last question from the Gattiden. Hey, can you please share best tools and recommended stack to use? That's a broad question, but do you have any recommendations that altogether that are a bit more generally applicable?
Depends on what you want to do, I guess. But
yeah, it's what we see is that different models perform really differently. It's you got to look at, once again, what is your application, and then you got to try. Because there is no one perfect model out there if you're using LLMs. I'll give you a good example. I have a series of questions that I ask all LLMs when new ones come out, see how well they do, and I have to update it because they get better and better, and they can start answering some of the questions. But right now, one of my hard questions that I ask models, the only one that can answer it is Kimi K2 Thinking, GPT 5.0, 5.1, the latest Claude, the latest Open DeepSeek, Gemini. None of them can answer the question. The only one that's managed to do it is Kimi K2, and it gave a very good answer to it. On the other hand, DeepSeek, which has quite a good reputation, we often find suddenly turns into Chinese characters for no apparent reason, just sort of spontaneously decides it's going to start speaking Chinese to us. But it can be a really good model in certain situations. Gemini can often outperform OpenAI at certain tasks. So there isn't really at the point where we'd say, hey, there's one perfect LLM. And likewise, when you're looking at technology stack, what do you want to do? It's the lots of different things that you can use to build your technology stack, from databases to front ends, communication protocols, various tools you add in. It really it's such a broad question. It's hard to give a good answer to it, other than experiment, I think.
I think that brings the point of try to build in a way that keeps yourself agnostic, right? I think that probably Python is a safe bet over everything language-wise. But then when you get into frameworks, then I would avoid marrying myself to a specific provider or framework too much. I had a very bad experience with LangChain, for example, and we went the opposite direction right after that, and just simply making HTTP calls to the providers, and we don't regret it whatsoever. So given that the things are just changing so rapidly and the models are topping each other up one after the other, keeping yourself agnostic I think it's a healthy choice.
Yeah, and I just want to emphasize as well, like starting with experiments. I really agree with you there. That is like start small, because it's better to get started with something. Maybe pilot a really small project in one of the most innovative teams and ask like, what's the biggest problem we have, and what is the smallest possible subset, like sub problem of that big problem, and try to solve it. Use something as simple as N8N or make.com or Zapier, if your organization allows those types of tools, of course, but still just something, hack something together, watch a YouTube tutorial even. Now I'm coming from the startup mindset here, but it is actually not that hard to get started. And once you get started, once you've done the first experiment, just it's kind of like a new world is opening up. I think the first step is always the hardest.
Thank you all three, Oliver, Manuel, Kevin. It's been really great to getting insights from you. I'll finish this with a comment from the chat from Lance Technus, who's been asking several questions, actually been quite active. Thank you for that, Lance. The next big step for us is to start working with the people, build trust around AI at our workplaces, gather teams, speak with them, learn what they're afraid and concerned with, and address these concerns. I think that's great. My final message to you as listeners is that we have this QR code that I'm sharing on the screen now. This will go to our Beetroot podcast. It's called Beetroot Juice, if you want to juice up your life a bit. We're talking about AI, interviewing a lot of people that are much smarter than me. And so scan that. And all the participants that you heard from here, Manuel, Kevin, and Oliver, you can find them on the landing page of this event. Look them up on LinkedIn, send them messages, say that you want to work with them. I'm sure you're open to different kinds of approaches. Thank you so much for coming, and thank you for listening. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for having me. Bye.
Bye.
And